What's good? What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the show, man. Recap with Mo. We got another one for you where we're getting ready to break down another episode of From, all right? Produced by MGM, and it shows on the channel Epics. But before we get into this episode, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a thing that we got going down here on this channel, all right? So tonight we're going to talk about Season 2, Episode number 4, titled This Way Gone. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the synopsis for this episode. I don't want to hesitate any further, so let's go ahead and get into it. So it states that as Boyd's condition grows more alarming, Sarah's return to town puts him in a difficult position. Jim shares a troubling new theory about the town. Now that we got that up out of the way, let's go ahead and get into it, all right? All right, so we start this episode with Kenny and his father and his mom coming in, viewing, checking out the clinic. And it's sort of like a recap a little bit, like sort of like what we're doing right here now. So it goes back a little bit, and I believe, what's the episode called? The Way Things Are Now. I think that was the episode that it was called back in season 1, episode number 2, where the whole situation went down with Kenny's father. We'll get into that a little bit later. But we see Kenny and his father trying to get him settled in. His father really doesn't want to stay there. But, his mom is like, hey, get yourself together and you can get back. And Bing is like, I'm going to get better real soon. But everybody knows that it's not going to happen that way. But they're trying to keep him settled so he can, settle in there and calm down a little bit because he doesn't want to be away from his family. And he's been having issues with opening up the door. So that's not good for anybody who's trying to stay, safe at night while the creatures or the monsters or whatever they are roaming throughout the night. All right. So from there, we see Boyd having a conversation with him outside because Kenny is troubled about this whole situation. And that's where we actually see Boyd making him a deputy. He's like, hey, I need somebody to, watch my back and to assist me with assisting people with transitioning into this new lifestyle or this nightmare that we're in. So that's when we see Kenny takes over as a deputy. And from there, we then see Julie and Tabitha. They're having a conversation in the kitchen, and they're talking, and Julie can just tell that shit ain't right with her mom, Tabitha. Like, hey, what's going on? And it's almost like the previous episode that we saw where they were talking in the kitchen, and I believe it's the same. I'm not sure. It looks like we just take a step back a little bit, but it pretty much, it's pretty much the same. But Tabitha is like, no, I'm good initially. But then she finally, opens her mouth up to tell her daughter, yes, I saw the same thing. And, I need to talk to your father about this whole situation. And Julia's like, okay, you can do that. But I feel like Julie at this point, hey, we're at this point now in our lives, in this context that we're in right now, that you're just going to have to lay the shit out on the line. Like, we cannot and we will not sit here and withhold information. Like, if you seeing shit or if you know something, go ahead and let me know so I can know the same thing, or I can convey that information to someone else. Someone else, if it's not, if it's nothing personal, of course, but it's something that can be said that can help somebody in this situation that we're in right now. Shit, go ahead and tell me. That's just personally how I feel about it. But from there, we see Kenny and he takes Boyd to see Sarah, because at first I thought this was still the recap, but then he finally runs up to Boyd and he says, hey, I gotta show you something. So he takes Boyd to go see Sarah, who he had found in the previous episode down in the bottom of the church. All right, so of course when Boyd sees her, he's like, shit, let me go ahead and talk to her by myself. So he sends Kenny away, which Kenny is reluctant to do, but at the same time, Boyd is just trying to get some questions out there because he needs answers, right? So of course, his first daggone question is what happened to you? Like, Boyd asks, how did you know what the tree was. Like, so he's asking all of these questions because he wanted to know, first thing, where did she go? And she states that she followed him right after he went inside of the tree. But of course, when she went inside the tree led her to where she was now. So she says, I'm not sure. Sarah is that girl who has been hearing things all this time. So I'm not sure if she's been down there the whole time or not, because it's been, at least 48 hours. I'm just saying. I'm not sure. But anyhow, so Boyd is like, how did you know about the tree? So she told him about the boy in white, and then all of that stuff. So from there, he was like, okay, we need to figure out a plan, because pretty much what these people are going to try, what they're going to try to do. Like, kill people in the city, and people already know who you are and what you've done. And she was like, no, you need to calm down, man. You know what you got to do, Boyd. And I was like, yeah, Boyd, you know what you got to do. You need to get old girl in the little, you need to get the little trailer ready outside and go on and do what you need to do, because you don't want her hearing voices once again, Boyd, and then you come up missing. So at the same time, I understand. He's like, you saved my life. I'm trying to save your life. It wasn't all on you. But look, Boyd, you never know what she's going to do. So you're better off just doing what you have to do to protect yourself. And then the last thing that I want to mention about this scene right here is that she mentioned to Boyd, she questioned, put out a question to Boyd, like, you didn't tell Kenny what happened, at the clinic, right? He was like, oh, hell no, I didn't do that. So now Kenny, he really wants, okay, I don't even want to move too fast. Let's go on to, so let's go ahead and head over to, Kenny and Boyd. So when Boyd finally comes up, they're having this whole discussion about Father Katari. All right, so Boyd says that he really doesn't want to do anything to harm Sarah, but Kenny is adamant about, hey, her ass need to go to the punishment trailer. She needs to be gone. Like, she done killed people in this town. Like, we don't need her above surface doing the same shit she was doing previously. So she gots to go. But of course, Boyd is looking like she saved my life. And Kenny is like, I don't care. Secondly, bruh, you lied. Like, you lied to me. You lied to us. Like, the whole point was to get rid of Sarah. But you thought that you could use Sarah in a way that could benefit you and benefit us, but at the same time you alluded to the fact that you were going to get rid of her. So you pretty much lied, Boyd, to everybody. But Boyd said when she killed these people, Kenny was like, hold on, wait a minute. Kenny was like, hold on, what you mean, what people? Like, she only killed one person. Like, she only killed Nathan. See, Boyd almost spoke too soon. See, Boyd, that's why you got to get rid of old girl. You got to get rid of Sarah, because Sarah is going to cause you to get in the punishment trailer, because you lying too much right now, Boyd. And I don't know if that's the worms that's under your skin or not that's causing you to forget shit, but this is not the time to start forgetting and start doing things out of the way or outside of your character at this point, because you got to do what's going to keep you safe. Anyway, moving on from there, man, we see Julie and Fatima, who's asking her to be her bridesmaid. So she's telling Julie, I want you to be my bridesmaid for the wedding. And he popped the question. He didn't want to hesitate, and he just wants to get married here. Julie's like, what the hell? Like, for real? And she was like, yeah, let's go ahead and get married. So I was like, cool, do what you want to do. So before Julie came in with Ethan, while they were walking in the door, she noticed Elgin sitting out on the porch staring out into the outdoors area. And so when she walked in, she spoke to Fatima about that as well. And Fatima was like, yeah, everybody's like that at some point when they first get here. You really got to let this stuff sink in. And she was like, yeah, I'll talk to him. And she was like, yeah, that'd be good for you to talk to him. And Julia's like, yeah, I definitely would do that. So when she goes outside, I've actually skipped over something. Let me see. Victor and Ethan. So Ethan is eager to go see Victor, right? So when Egan knocks on his door, of course, Victor's in there coloring with his crayons. You know, what else would he be doing right in his I'm sorry, y'all. But what else would he be doing? Of course. Now, I couldn't really tell what he was illustrating on the paper. It was a little dark there. Maybe I need to go back and look at it. But anyhow, because as he stated before, he must have dreamed something that he's putting it on paper so he doesn't forget, right? So anyhow, Ethan comes in and he was like, yeah, how you doing? And he was like, oh, why you here? So Victor is being rude to Ethan because he's in his feelings right now because he feels some type of way about, he allowing, Jay to come up in his room and just pretty much steal stuff from his room. So he feels some type of way about Ethan. So he was like, oh, you coming back up here to steal some more shit from my room? And Ethan is like, no, I told him that you were going to be mad about it. So look, Victor, need to calm your horses a little bit. Ethan ain't that one. You need to be looking at Jade if anybody. But I'm just saying, don't treat little buddy like that, all right? Ethan didn't do anything to you. And Ethan was, he was eagerly anxious to see him, and then he was concerned with him, concerned about his well-being as well. And so he was like, where did you go? And of course, Victor, you can't really get anything out of Victor. Victor doesn't share anything with anybody. But like I said before, you mark my words, I believe that Victor has a large portion to do with what's going on here. I just can't place my finger on it, but he seems like he's part of the issue. I'm not sure exactly what it is, the experiment or whatever it may be. I just feel like he has something to do with this, and I just don't know. Let me go ahead and get off of that, man. But so next we see Elgin and Julie. As they're getting ready to leave, Julie goes over and speaks to Elgin. Like I stated before, he's sitting outside on the porch, and he's just looking out, and she's like, hey. And so she introduces herself to him and pretty much tells him, it's going to get better. And he was like, that's nice to hear. And she was like, hey, I'm just here to talk just in case you ever need to talk. He was like, that's great to hear as well. And then he sees, of course, Ethan running out. So then his attention shifts in that direction, but at the same time, he's still, he's really pondering what's going on here from the visions or the dreams that he's had as well. So from there, we head over to Christy and Boyd. Okay, so I forgot to mention earlier that when Boyd was at the beginning of this episode, he had an episode where he pretty much fell down to his knees. So that brings us to this part here. So I guess I didn't forget it, but I just wanted to put it in this context, right? So now we see Boyd, he's sitting down in the clinic, and he's trying to convey to her, that he's having these issues, and we already know what his problem is right now. But on the flip side of it, he's trying to tell her that he was bitten by these spiders. And maybe because he was bitten by these spiders that, that's the reason why he's having these episodes or whatever that's going on in his body at this moment. So he takes off his shirt and he starts to show her all of these bites and these cuts and things on his body when Christy notices the scar on his right arm. And of course, she was like, well, what the hell is this? And he was like, oh, it's nothing, it's fine. And she was like, okay, well, make sure you keep it clean. I ain't gonna press too hard, but I'm just telling you, go ahead and keep it clean so it doesn't get infected. And he's like, okay. But he reassures her that he's fine. So then he tries to stand up again, and of course he falls backwards once again. So I don't know, y'all. I just think that Boyd needs to be straightforward with everyone. Tell people, like, maybe he needs to have a town meeting and just tell everyone what he saw and what he's heard from Martin and, the likes of anything else that he's seen out there in the forest with Sarah. But of course, he doesn't want to feel embarrassed. Because he saw the way his son looked at him in the previous episode when he was conveying that information to him as well. But anyway, going on from there, we see Kenny's mom, who's at the diner, of course, where she always is, and he's just standing in the diner, and she conveys to him like, hey, I'm a little concerned about you as well as Boyd, because y'all working a little bit too much. Like, I'm really concerned about y'all. And he was like, oh, we're gonna be good, we're gonna get it together. And she was like, I hope so, because you guys are working too much. So from there, we see Bhakta. And now I'm glad to really have this conversation, because I honestly feel out of this whole episode, this was probably like one of the best scenes in this episode, because it was almost like we had the opportunity to meet these people one-on-one. And I think I actually heard a side of Jay that I've never heard, from as well. So we see Bhakta, who's sitting in the bar, and Jay comes in, and of course he's sarcastic as usual. But anyway, so as he's coming in, Bhakta pretty much says, like, he asked me to turn around. And I was like, hell, who is she talking about? Then I thought about it. I was like, oh, she's talking about Elgin at this point. He asked me to turn around. So she's telling Jade the story about what transpired on the bus before they even got into the town, right? So she was like, he asked me to turn around, and she stated that he begged her. He literally begged me to turn around. But of course, I didn't listen. So Jade is like, well, when did he ask you to turn around? And she was like, huh? So she turns around and he was like, well, when did he ask you to turn around? And she was like, well, he was like, was it before or after you saw the tree? And she was like, after we saw the tree. And he was like, oh, well, it was you were already screwed at that point anyhow. I was like, damn, Jay, look, she's still trying to process this, bro. But anyway, Jay said, I mean, it's not your fault, though. It's nothing to blame yourself for. It is what it is. Now, this right here was a sad story, man, because I was like, shit, like, okay. So she conveyed to Jay that she wasn't supposed to even be driving this bus at this time. I was like, shit, like, what's going on? And she stated that she was only doing it to pay off her degree. So she had actually finished her degree and had paid her bill off, her tuition off in full. And all she wanted to do was work a few more weeks, stack up some dough, and take a great vacation to reward herself. And I was like, damn. Oh, and she was like, is this what I deserve? Like, I was like, hell no, sis. Man, I don't even know what to say, man. I feel a lot differently than I did, about Bhakta at this time, because at first I just thought she was being one of those. And I'm not going to call out of her name, but now I can see why she was like she was. Like, I just want to get this job done and head back home. But realistically, she was just thinking, like, I've done everything I needed to do. I've accomplished my goals, and I'm ready to go on vacation. Shit, I can't argue with that. But you slightly on the vacation right now, babe. But but anyhow, man. So, and then Jay shares his story, where he pretty much stated that he had just sold off his company and achieved the goal that he had always wanted to achieve, and he ended up there a few days later. I was like, damn, well, I don't really feel that much for Jay, because he's been an ass since he's gotten there. But anyway, I can feel it on both ends, man. I'm gonna just be honest with you. But from there, we see Tabitha looking for Jim. So she comes to the clinic, and she's looking through the rooms. She doesn't see Jim. He's not in bed or anything like that. So then she comes up in the hallway. She comes up on Mary, who's peeking into the medicine cabinet. That's what it looks like. So she's perusing the drugs and whatnot, and Tabitha is like, who the hell are you? Like, what you doing? And she was like, oh, I'm a friend of, Christy and Jim. I'm a nurse as well, but Jim is already gone. He left earlier. So, of course, she was like, oh, okay. So from there, we see Tabitha coming out, and she sees Jim outside of the diner, and he wants to show her something with the house. So he's pretty much standing in front of the house, but really what he brought her over there for is just to whisper, not to whisper sweet things in her ear, but to pretty much convey to her in a low tone type of way, hey, I think some other shit is going on. And I do too, Jim, because something just ain't right. Or you seeing creatures at night? and everything is killing people at night, something ain't right. That's it. But anyway, getting back on the script, man, he shares with her that, everything that Tabitha has shared with him pretty much about the electrical wires not being connected to nothing, not being grounded to anything, and the city still having power is impossible. And he says, I'm not saying that it's not true, but what I'm saying is so he stepped back into his profession a little bit and stated that when we were working on, like roller coasters and things like that, we had to do the things that were impossible to make the experience better for the rider on the roller coaster. So he's thinking at this point, he's talking about like maybe somebody has put this shit together and it's sort of like an experiment. All right, some type of experiment where people are trying to figure out, how people would respond to certain shit, sort of like a ride or something like that. And that has been the discussion about this show. Like, are the monsters really real, or are they people who are... But, I mean, you can't really explain the shit that's happening with once they come in contact with the creatures or the monsters or the aliens or whatever they are. You can't really explain that because that's too real to be, not true. So I'm just not sure exactly what it is, and I hope that it's not some type of experiment, because that would take this whole show to hell, right? Because... that doesn't make man, that would be a crusher to so many people's imagination, including mine. Like, this show is fantastic as it is, with us pondering over what's going on, the mystery behind it all. But if you just come out and claim that it's somebody behind this whole situation, I'm like, was it worth it? I mean, shit. Like, what's the purpose in all of this? But anyhow, and then he also shared with Tabitha as well about Christy's fiance being on the bus as well. So Christy was like, for real? Like how ironic is that? You meet up here and you have nowhere to go. So you better love each other, because you can't go anywhere at this moment. So after he says that, he conveys to Tabitha that he heard voices from the radio, and that voice knew his name as well. And of course, Tabitha is like, well, was there anyone else that heard the voice? Because she's thinking in her mind, like, shit, if you were the only one that heard it, then that doesn't necessarily mean that it was true. So of course, we see that he's going to have to go and talk to Donna, because that's the only other person that would have heard the shit, right? So from there, we see Boyd and Father Cartry talking in his office. Now, Boyd is like, shit, you're not supposed to be here. And Father Cartry is like, look, what is your purpose in telling Kenny that, Sarah killed his dad? And all he's going to say is that you lied and that you betrayed him. And what he's really trying to tell, Boyd at this point is that she's valuable. So if she's valuable, you need to protect her by all means, to get to your ultimate goal. And so that's pretty much what Father Cartry is pretty much trying to tell him with that. And then he also says that leaders have to be an ass at some point in time throughout this whole situation. The leaders are going to have to be the assholes. And, to a certain degree, I agree with Father Cartry, even though he's not there. So, and then another thing that he adds to this is that he says that you're the father Kenny no longer has. So we're going back to that first scene on this episode. Like, Kenny is looking at Boyd as a father figure because his dad is no longer there. So if you tell Kenny at this point that you knew about this whole shit going down with Sarah leaving the door open for his father to get killed, what benefit do you get from that? The only thing that you're going to do is make this shit worse. So that was pretty much the end of that with Father Cartry and Boyd. Going on from there, we see Donna and Jim. Now, Jim is really hungry to find out if someone else heard this, and he knows for sure that Donna heard the same thing that he heard. So he comes in, and Donna finally admits that, yes, I heard the shit. Yes, I heard it. But I also know that the shit sounds crazy. Like, there are some things that walk and talk. How do we not know that it wasn't some of those things that were talking to us on the other side of the radio? And then her best, the best way she could put it was, keep our damn mouths closed. Keep them shut. And then, of course, Jim is like, no, we need to tell them. She was like, no, you need to keep your mouth shut. That's what we need to do, you and I both, because we can't really explain. So once we get more information, maybe we'll be able to break this shit down a little bit more. But until then, keep your mouth shut. All right. So Jim is like, okay, well, where's the radio? She was like, well, it's in the back, but it was busted up during the storm. So, of course, he rushes out of there, I assume, to go check out the radio, right? So from there, we see Sarah and Kenny. And I already knew this shit was going to go down, man. So Kenny is now questioning her, like, okay, so you said that you hear voices. What are these voices saying to you? Because I'm really trying to understand what Boyd is telling me. Like, he doesn't want to go against what Boyd is telling him because he trusts Boyd right now. But, he really is up in the air about what to do with Sarah. What type of penalty should there be for Sarah? Should she be placed in the penalty box or the penalty, whatever it is outside, the trailer thing outside? Like, convince me why you should not be placed into the box. And that's pretty much what Kenny is. But while he's talking, she's sitting up here like, hey, I need to share some shit with you. I was like, oh, hell to the no. Anyway, going on from there, man. From there, we have a confrontation that goes down at the Colony House with the new guy who's whooping somebody's ass because they went into his stuff or touched his items. And he was like, don't put your damn hands on my shit anymore. So I was like, okay, back up, give me 50 feet. But anyhow, so Donna comes in and she was like, hold on, that's not how we play it up here at the Colony House. And he was like, don't put your hands on my... So I was like, ooh. All right, so Donna goes off to the kitchen, and then Fatima shows up, right? So when Fatima comes in, she's talking to her, and then she was like, you know what? I got an idea. So she goes and grabs the axe, and I'm talking about Donna at this point. So she goes and she grabs an axe, and old boy is laying on the couch like he's comfortable at this point because he done did what he did, but he didn't see this coming. So Donna comes in, and she was like, get your ass up. And it's like, are you serious? Like, I'm chilled out right now. So she hits the wall with the axe, puts a hole into the she puts a hole into the wall, right? So then he was like, are you crazy? And she was like, yeah, get your shit, let's go. Since you can't abide by the rules of this house, you're not gonna live in this house. Let's go. I got somewhere for you to go. So from there, they head outside, and old boy's walking. He's like, okay, where the hell we going? She was like, you'll see. So then they finally get to the bus that he arrived on. So she was like, okay, this is where you're going to be. Until you can get your shit together, I see you going to be a problem, so this is where you're going to hide out. So initially, old boy's like, I'm cool with it. I'm great. So when he gets on the bus, he sees the blood that was left by the two elderly individuals, the elderly couple that were killed by Mr. Smiley, right? So at first, he was like, oh, shit, like, am I safe? So you could see his demeanor started to change a little bit. But then from there, Donna got up there and she was like, look, you're going to be all right. I'm going to leave you, this talisman here. You just hang it up exactly like this. Make sure it's in the window. Keep the door closed. You'll be all right. Until you learn how to respect me and my house and my rules, bro, you not going nowhere. You're going to sit right here on this bus because it seems like you're going to be a whole problem. And I was like, damn, Donna. But anyhow, so from there we see one of my favorite characters, which we find out her name is Tilly. So Tilly and Boyd, they have a little communication, and she comes up on him, and she's pretty much just trying to talk to him and tell her, introduce herself to him as well, and tell him that this wasn't my destination, and I heard that you had quite an adventure. So she seems like a fun individual, but of course Boyd don't have time to talk about the shit. We try to move on. So he was like, look, I'm looking for my deputy. And she was like, well, you're not gonna find him in there though. He's already gone down to the clinic. So Boyd arrives at the clinic where he sees Kenny. And Kenny is now looking into the room at the exact spot where his father laid. And I was like, hell no. So obviously Sarah has conveyed to him what went down. She left the door open, and that takes us back to episode 2 of season 1, titled The Way Things Are Now. So if you're not familiar, just a quick recap, because this is Recap with Mo. Pretty much, she left the door open because she was hearing voices. So she killed one man by knife by sticking it into his throat. She was hearing voices with that. And she stated that the only reason why she left the door open because the voices told her that that would be the way that they would all be saved. So there was a nurse there, and of course there was Kenny's dad, Bean, who was there as well, who was actually getting ready to go to sleep. But ironically, if you go back to that episode, he was talking about these nightmares. He just didn't know that he was going to become part of the nightmare. So getting back to where we are in this episode, Kenny is now standing at that spot, and he turns to Boyd and he's like, okay, what's the real truth, pretty much? Because I know that you know. And you know that I know at this point because you see me standing here. So what's going on? What are the truths that we need to know about? And Boyd is like, no, I need you to listen. And he's trying to put his hands on Kenny. And Kenny's like, get the hell up off of me, bro. Like, this ain't the time for Philly touchy right now. I don't want you to console me. What I really want from you is just tell me the truth. And Boyd needs to tell people the truth. Like, tell them what you've seen. Tell them what you've heard. Boyd, this is not the time to sugarcoat shit. We need you to be honest with people. Right now, Kenny is asking you a real question, and he already knows the answer because Sarah has already shared it. So now Kenny is like, her ass is going to the box. I don't care what you're talking about. And Boyd is like, now he don't want to have another situation where he falls backwards on that concrete floor. But I'm just saying, you know, he needs to calm down because that's what he did earlier in the episode where he was like, she not going into the box and passed the hell out. But anyway, so Kenny's like, she's going to the box and you lied to me. And he was like, no, she not. So he takes off his badge at this point and he was like, you figure this shit out on your own. He also states something else, which we've heard in multiple episodes throughout, you know, the season, where his mom has been, you know, sobbing every night because she thinks she's to blame for his father passing away, being killed or murdered or slaughtered at this facility in the clinic. But the truth is, Sarah was the whole reason why all of this shit went down. And then you kept it from me, Boyd. You knew this before you went on your little adventure. So Kenny's like, hey, F off, and we just gonna do what we're gonna do, but we're not good no more. So listen, this episode didn't have a whole lot of gore in it, but it was still great. I would still give it, you know, I give it about a good 7.5, man, because it still broke down a lot of storylines that we needed to, you know, know about. And I learned a little bit more about Jade that, you know, he's not too bad of a character. I do not think personally that Jade is going to be a problem too much longer. I also don't believe that old boy on the bus is going to be in this show too much longer. I'm just not sure, but it just seems like he's a little too hot-headed, and those that are hot-headed don't make it too long on this show. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you felt about this episode. Leave comments down below because I do read the comments and I do respond to the comments as well. So please leave a comment down below, man, and please like and subscribe to this channel. With that being said, I'm getting ready to sign out on this. Peace.